Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Taanis Daf Yud Aleph begins in the middle of a discussion of Agadata about how a person should limit his intake of food during travel and during a time of a famine. Gemara will tell us more about the halachos of restrictions a person should impose upon himself during a famine. The Gemara will then get into voluntary fast. Should a person fast voluntarily or not? Some discussion on that. And towards the end of the Daf, the Gemara will get into the actual halachos of fasting, when you have to declare a fast in order for it to count, and when you say Anenu, which is a special tefillah that's added to Shemona Esrei on a fast. So let's begin. The Gemara says that although we've seen earlier that you're supposed to limit your intake of food when you're traveling, the Gemara said that Rav Papa ate a bread. He ate a loaf of bread for every parsa that he traveled. Apparently he did not limit his intake, because he held that the reason to limit your intake is because it may cause harm to your intestines. But he, Rav Papa, being a very large man, did not run the risk of suffering any harm if he traveled while he had food in the system. Okay, next the Gemara says we've seen before that you're supposed to limit your intake of food. You're supposed to ration food during the times of famine. So the Gemara quotes something on that. The Gemara says that somebody who rations his food during a famine will be saved from a misa mashuna, from an unusual form of death, as the pasuk says, Berav padcha mimaves. In famine, Hashem redeems you from a death. So the Gemara says, why does it say Berav in famine? It should say Meirav, that it's from a famine he's redeeming you. So it doesn't mean to say that it's from a famine he's redeeming you. It means to say that in your famine, because you are limiting yourself in a time of a fast, in the time of a famine, even if you have enough, in that merit you'll be saved from a misa mashuna. Now, other halachos during a time of a famine, the Gemara says, Rish Lakish says a person is forbidden to engage in marital relations during that time, as you see from Yosef. Yosef had two children, but the pasuk specifically says Yosef Yilad Shnei Vanim B'terem Tavish Nasarav. They were born before the times of the hunger had arrived, which shows that it was specifically then, because he would not have been together with his wife during the time of the famine. So the Gemara says, there's a brisa that says that somebody who has not yet fulfilled the mitzvah of Peri Verivia is allowed to engage in marital relations during the famine. He does not have to withhold because he's trying to fulfill the mitzvah of Peri Verivia. That's a time of mitzvah. Now, Gemara says, what happens if somebody sets himself apart from a suffering of the Kehillah? The Kehillah, the entire congregation, are suffering something, and he's fine, and he sets himself apart. So Gemara says, somebody who will do that, so the two malachim that follow him around wherever he goes, right, the malachei hashares, they will come and put their hands on his head, and they will say that this guy, Pliny, who did not suffer with the community, will not see the nechama hatzibur, will not see the salvation of the community, the consolation of the community. There's another brisa. It says, when the time that the community is suffering, someone should not say, well, I'm okay, I'll go to my house and eat, and my soul will be in peace. Because if he does that, and he ignores the suffering of the Kehillah, about him, the Torah says, psukim in Yeshaya, which discuss people ignoring the warning of the Nevi'im, they apply to him. So the Gemara has two levels of how they apply to him. And the psukim there say that the Navi warned the Klal Yisrael to do tshuva because bad things are going to happen to them, and their response was one of two things. It was either, the first response was, well, then let's have fun now and eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we die. And they at least listened to him, but they said their response was wrong. Their reaction was, therefore, let's have fun now. And there was another group that responded by just not believing him, and they said, no, we're going to have fun now, we're going to have fun tomorrow, and your dire predictions are not going to come to pass at all. So the Gemara says, first, we're talking about someone who ignores the suffering of the tzibur, and about him we have the first group, and they say as follows. They say, V'hine sasu v'simcha harag bakar, u'shchot tzon, achol basar, u'shasos yain, ki machar, nomos. Achol v'shaso, ki machar, nomos. So they say, let's slaughter cows and shecht sheep, because we want meat, and we want to drink wine, because tomorrow we're going to die. So we have this terrible prediction, and therefore we're going to ignore the prediction, and we're going to just try to have as much fun as we can. So that's what this guy is doing. He's ignoring the suffering of the tzibur, and he's just having fun. Now, what does the psukim say afterwards? What do the psukim say afterwards are going to happen to him? V'nigla b'oznei Hashem tzivokos, and these words will be in Hashem's ears. Imichuper oven hazel lochem ad timusa. And you will not get kapara, you will not get atonement for this avera until you die. You die, the Rishonim say, means in Olam Haba. Now, that's the people who ignored the suffering of the tzibur. Then you have Rishonim. Those are people who are really wicked. What is it about them? So those are the psukim later. They say, Yisayu echayayin, let's come and get wine. Nizba shecha, we'll get some beer. Hayakazay yamachar, we'll do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. So we're totally ignoring this warning altogether. We're assuming nothing's going to happen. Now, what does the Torah say is going to happen to them? So the psukim later say, Hatzadik avad, ve'enish sam malev, ki mipnei haro nesef hatzadik. Tzadik has died, he's lost, nobody notices, because of this evil, the tzaddik is lost. This evil, meaning this terrible thing that's going to happen to these people, the tzaddik doesn't want to see it, and therefore to spare the tzaddik from having to see it, the tzaddikim are taken from the world at that time. Okay, so what should a person do? So the Brisa continues further, and this is a very long Brisa. The Brisa says, what should a person do? So one should partake of the suffering of the tzibur. Like we see by Moshe Rabbeinu, that when Kaisa was fighting Amalek, Moshe sat on a rock. It says, why do you sit on a rock? So he should be in discomfort. He wasn't able to fight the war itself, but he should at least be uncomfortable. He shouldn't sit on a nice mattress if they're busy fighting a war. Now, Brisa says further, and somebody who does suffer along with the tzibur, they will partake, they will be involved in the nechama of the tzibur, even though they themselves did not have to suffer. Now, the Gemara said, the Brisa says, and who's going to know? Who's going to testify against me whether I suffered or I didn't suffer? So the Gemara says, the stones of a person's house will testify, the beams of the house will testify, and the little half bricks between the beams will also testify, like the pasuk says, Ki even mikir tizak, a stone will shout from the wall, v'chafis me'etzi anena, and a brick will answer from the wood. Now, says the Gemara, there are other things that will say edus against him as well. Yeshiva Rav Shilo, they said that the two Malachei Yasharis will say edus against him, like it says, Ki Malachav Yitzavalach. He'll tell his angels about you. Rav Chidka says the person's own neshama will testify against him, like it says, Misha Cheves Chekecha. That's within your heart, in your lap. Will Shemor Pisrei Picha will guard your mouth, because it's going to be it'll report what you say. So therefore, you be careful what you say. And some say the person's own body, the limbs of his body, will testify against him, like it says, Atam Eidai Niyom Hashem, you yourself are my witnesses, your body are my witnesses, says Hashem. Brisa goes further. Kel Munavein Ovel. Hashem is faithful, God of faithfulness without anything being done wrong or unfairly. So Gemara says this is because, although tzaddikim suffer in this world, that's because every tiny sin that they did must be paid, and it's paid in this world. Just like Rishaim, they will have every tiny sin of theirs paid in the next world. Now Rishaim do well in this world because every tiny mitzvah that they do deserves payment, and they get that paid in this world. And the tzaddikim get their payment for every tiny mitzvah that they do in the next world. And therefore the pasuk ends off, Tzaddik v'yashar hu, Hashem is just and straight. Everything works out perfectly. And the Brisa continues, when a person passes away and is on the way to his final resting place, so all his deeds, all his actions are said over to him. They're specified to him. And they tell him, didn't you do this and this in such and such place? And he'll say yes. And they'll say, well, you signed this document that testifies that you are admitting that this is what you did. Like it says, and it'll be signed by the hand of every man. Not only that, but the person himself says that the judgment is fair. Like it says, you yourself will confirm the justice of the punishments that you're supposed to receive. Okay, now the Gemara goes on to discuss what happens when people do voluntary fasts. So Shmuel says it's an averi. You're not allowed to fast voluntarily. You should eat and be healthy. Now where does Shmuel get that from? So he gets it from the Tana of Rabbi Elazar HaKapor, the great one. Rabbi Elazar HaKapor Barabi. So where it says there's a machlokes between Rabbi Elazar HaKapor, and Rabbi Elazar. So it's Rabbi Elazar HaKapor and the regular Rabbi Elazar. Machlokes is about what do we learn from a Nazir. By the Nazir, he limited himself from wine. So Belazar Kapper says he limited himself from wine, and he's called a choite. It says v'chiper olav me'asher chata ala nafesh. He has to be atoned for his avera. So you see, if he withheld himself from wine is an avera. So certainly, if you fast, it's completely an avera. Now, the regular Rebbe Lazar says no. Another is called a kadosh. It says kadosh yeh gadol peres ar rosha, holy shall be, and the hair should grow long. So you see, he's called kadosh, he's called holy, and he just withheld himself from wine. So somebody who withholds himself from all food and pleasures is certainly called holy. Okay, great. So now what's each one going to do with the others? What is Rabbi Elazar Kapper going to do with the word kadosh? And what is Rabbi Elazar going to do with the fact that he's called chayte? So the Gemara says kadosh is not a problem for Rabbi Elazar Kapper. It's referring to his hair. It says kadosh yeh gadol perasar rosho. His hair is kadosh, meaning you cannot use it for anything. It has to be destroyed when he finally cuts it off. Now, Rabbi Elazar is not bothered by the fact that it's called a choti, because that's referring to the fact that he became tamei. That pasuk is in context of somebody who becomes tamei and messes up his naziros. That's his avera. That's what he has to do. Another one is a kasha. Rabbi Elazar, you're telling me, says that a person is allowed to fast. So fasting is a good thing, and you learn that from the nazir who's called kadosh for just withholding himself from wine. But we see Rabbi Elazar elsewhere said that the person should look at his intestines as if they're holy, and he has to treat them properly with respect. Like it says, Bakir b'cha kadosh, your insides are holy. So that seems to imply that a person is obligated to give himself proper nutrition. When it says not a kasha, somebody who cannot bear a fast is not allowed to fast. He has to give himself proper nutrition. Somebody who could bear a fast, he is allowed to fast, and for him, he's called a kadosh. Now, it says there's further, somebody who fasts voluntarily is called a chassid. Like the Torah says, Gomel nafsho ish chassid. Somebody who takes his soul off food is called a chassid. V'ocher she'ero. Somebody who messes up his own flesh, who's not feeding himself properly, is cruel. It says there's further. A Talmid Chacham is not allowed to fast because he's not able to learn properly. It limits his ability to study Torah, and therefore he's not allowed to fast. Says Rav Sheshes, a Talmid Chacham who fasts is just like a dog ate his food. It's not called a fast, it's not a mitzvah, it's just somebody who didn't eat because he didn't have any food. That's no better than that. This is Riyam Bar Abba. In Bavel, they didn't fast at all. Only Tisha B'Av was the only time they fasted. They didn't have to make other fasts. Rashi says they didn't have to make fasts for rain because they had plenty of rainwater, as we've seen on Daf Yud, because they were in a low part of the world and the water flowed down to them, whatever did rain. Okay, so now we refer back to our Mishnah. In the Mishnah we had said the halachos of the special 3 fasts that they initially make and they set up when it didn't rain in the proper time yet. So the Gemara says about the halacha of saying Anenu and Kabbalas HaTaanis. So we know that if a person is fasting, he's supposed to say Anenu. Now, the Tzibor says Anenu, the Chazan says Anenu in Shachris, because we know that somebody's going to finish the fast for sure, so you're safe saying Anenu. The individual should only say Anenu by Mincha just before the day is over, because otherwise you're not sure he's going to be able to finish the fast. Now, Anenu, you're probably only going to say if you have a real official fast day. If you have a Kabbalas HaTaanis, you have to accept upon yourself to fast. So the Gemara discusses an interesting case. Where it says Rav Zeres in the name of Rav Huna, somebody accepted to fast upon himself, and he eats and drinks up until the fast begins, meaning he accepts himself to fast. He Mekabel Taanis by Mincha, so the fast is going to start tomorrow. But he eats and drinks the whole night, no problem. As soon as he gets up in the morning, if he wants to say Anenu, he can say Anenu. She really shouldn't say it till Mincha, but he could say Anenu tomorrow. Now, what happens if he fasts the whole day? No one's fast day is over. He decides, you know what, I'm going to fast a little bit longer. I'm going to keep fasting overnight, at least until tomorrow morning. So Rav Huna says, then when he gets up in the morning, he's still fasting, he does not say Anenu. Someone wants to know, why doesn't he say Anenu? He's fasting. So Gemara offers 3 possible explanations. First explanation is that he's now only accepted to fast for part of a day. His original fasting was 1 day, 24 hours. Once the sun set, that fast was over. Then he decided to keep fasting randomly until the morning. That's not a whole day, that's only until the morning. So maybe Rav Huna holds you don't say Anenu on a partial fast, on a fast that's not the entire day. Now, the Gemara offers a separate option. The Gemara says maybe it is considered a fast, but you don't say Anenu for that fast. Meaning the first explanation was that it's not called a fast at all. Fast, a part of a day, is not called a fast. In order to be a fast, it's got to be a whole day. Second explanation is it is called a fast, but it's not a chashuv enough fast to get an Anenu. The Gemara gives a third explanation that the Kabbalas HaTaanis doesn't count, because he was never Makabal Taanis for this fast. He was only Makabal Taanis for yesterday's fast. This fast, he only decided to fast once it was already after nightfall. He decided to continue fasting. That means that he wasn't Makabal Taanis until he was in the middle of the period of fasting. He was in the middle of the night when he's fasting. Part of the Taanis went by without him having been Makabal Taanis. He does not have a Kabbalah as a Taanis that was preceding his fast, and therefore it's not considered to be a real fast day. It's just considered like he's not eating, and he says he does not say Anenu. Now, based on this, so I want to learn, you should always do Kabbalah Satainis by Mincha time, at least the day before, so that you know you did your Kabbalah Satainis well in advance of the Tainis itself. Okay, now the Gemara is an incident. The Gemara says Mar Ukva came to Ginzak. They asked him 3 questions. Question number 1, is it called a fast if you fast only for a couple hours, not for an entire day? Then they asked him, a clay jug that held wine of the goyim, it held yayin nesech. Are you allowed to use it, or is it usher for a yid to use because it will leak wine flavor into whatever you put in there? The third question was, what did Moshe Rabbeinu wear during the Shivas Yimei Malum? The first 7 days in which the Mishkan was up, Moshe was the Kohen who worked there, who performed the avodah. What did he wear? He didn't have the big kahuna. He wore the big kahuna. What did he wear? So the Gemara says Mar Ukva didn't have the answer to any of these 3 questions. He went to the yeshiva and he asked, and they told him as follows: a fast for a part of the day is called a fast, and you can say the special tefillah for that fast. You can say Anenu. As far as the clay jugs of Gentiles, of the Goyim, you cannot use them within 12 months, but once 12 months have gone by, then you're allowed to, because you assume all the flavor went out and expired. As far as the third question, he wore a special white garment. Moshe Rabbeinu, during Yeshivas Yimei Malum, wore a special white garment that was completely woven from thread, was not made in pieces and sewn together. There shouldn't be any seams or hems or anything in which he could hide coins. Therefore, it could be clean and clear to everybody that he did not possibly steal or hide it.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.